For today's review, we are looking at the Redeemer and the Dark Redeemer from Spawn. And the reason why I'm doing this review in this format is because both of these action figures are identical when it comes to their sculpt details and everything. The only difference between them is just their paint colors. So to save myself the trouble of having to separate both reviews, I might as well just talk about both of them in the same video. And to provide a little bit of context to who the Redeemer is as a character, from what I can remember, he is the adversary of Spawn, he is Heaven's message to dealing with the Hell Spawn, and there have been three other characters that have been the Redeemer. That's all I can remember. If I did a really bad job, do provide some context in the comments below if you feel like doing so. It would be much appreciated. As for the Dark Redeemer here, I have not been able to find any information on this version of the character because I'm assuming that he is actually just a repaint that they made for the toy line. He does not exist in the comics, which isn't a bad thing if he just exists in the toy line, because what I like about this is the fact that it reminds me a lot of that old superhero trope where you have a good version of the character and you have an evil version of the character. So a good example would be Flash and the Reverse Flash, Optimus Prime and Nemesis Prime, Spider-Man, and of course his black suit spider costume that he wears where his personality changes with the two different personas. I like this sort of trope, and to see that they made this repaint just to represent the light and the dark of Redeemer's character, probably, maybe that's what they were going for, it's actually pretty cool. So, just want to mention that. And without further ado, let's jump into the accessories that are included with both of these figures. Since both action figures are identical, of course their accessories are also the same as well. And we're going to start with Redeemer. He does come with this sword, as you can see, in this gold color. It's more of a darker gold, not exactly a bronze color. And in terms of the details of the hilt here for his sword, it is nicely done. I like the little details that are sculpted into the hilt. It is the same on both sides. And for the handle here, you can see that it's very simplistic. There's also a cross down here for the bottom of the hilt handle for the sword. As for the blade, there is a little bit of a wash. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe on this side, there's a little bit more of it. So to give it that sort of like wear down that it's an old sword. There's also details up here that are sculpted on the tip of the sword blade. So yeah, it's done pretty nicely. And that is the sword that comes with Redeemer. As for the Dark Redeemer, it is of course the same, but in this different color, it looks really nice. So the wash on this sword looks a lot better than the other one. As you can see, there's more of the sort of wear and tearness of it, like the paint is fading. I like the fact that it's there. You have the same sculpted details, of course, but in this black color, and it's the same down here. As for the blade itself, the wash is done much better than the one on the gold. So really nice that they did it in this style. I like this. And here's the comparison between the two of the swords, as you can see. And that is basically the accessories that are included with these two figures. Moving on into the aesthetics portion of the review, let's start with the Redeemer. As you can see with the color tones, he is much brighter compared to the Dark Redeemer. He has a lot of blues in most areas mixed in with the gold armor parts, and his wings are this gray color, but it's on the lighter tone. And let's take a look at some of these sculpted details on this figure. So I want to start with his torso area because the chest armor right here on the upper part does have this nice sculpted pattern, as you can see. It's in the flowery design from what I can tell. And the only other part of the armor that has this sort of pattern is on the side right here with the shoulder armors up here. Same thing on this side. And down here by his leg armor for this side of the leg. So that sculpted detail is done nicely. I wish there was a different shade of like gold that was painted on it so it stands out a little bit more. As for the blue areas, there is a bit of contrast right here that you can see. There's like this brighter blue and this darker blue. And this area right here, unfortunately, is because of paint bleeding from the gold into the blue. But down here, you can see that the blue is slightly different as well. And I don't know if this is like a whole separate piece that they just painted blue over, so that's why it looks different. But it does retain the same sort of like texturing detail that you can see in the blue areas. I hope my camera's focusing. There it is. You can see that. So it's nicely done. And for this waist area, which I believe this could be considered like his belt armor parts of the suit, he does have the cross in this green color. Moving down to his legs, you do have armor on this side, which is like all the way up to his thigh. But for this side, he has this sort of like, I don't know what this is. It does show these crosses on it. I'm not sure like what's stored in here, but it's not like armor like this side of the leg. But he does have lower leg armor as well. And as you can see, it's like in this plating style with the gold. And the gold also has like some differences in shading as well. Like the gold from his feet to this part, it looks a little bit different in the lighting. But actually, is it the same color? No, it's actually a different color. Wow. So it's not just the lighting. It is actually a different shade of gold down here with the leg armor up here. And you can see the same sort of like color with the armor parts of his gauntlets to his hands. So they did apply a different shade of gold, which is interesting for the areas that are his hands and his feet. Now for his head sculpt, he does have that cross detail for the front part of his face, and he does have these spikes on the top of his head, which are pokey. And what I like about the spikes is that this is how you know it's a Spawn character, because Mcfarlane loves including spike designs in a lot of his drawings. So, you know, this is very Spawn right here when it comes to the design. And you can see that there's spikes even on this shoulder armor here on the side as well. Now, these pieces are soft PVC, as you can see, and they're not actually glued on completely. They're like very loose, but they are glued onto this part of the shoulder. So do be careful if you are moving this figure around. Now let's take a look at the details of his wings. It is done nicely when it comes to sculpt. And you have seen these wings before, because this figure was what introduced this wing sculpt, which they did reuse for Hawkman in the collector edition line. And there is a wash on the wings here. As you can see, there's like this black wash they did to give some areas this darker look. And I like the fact that it looks faded. And on the back side, it is the same exact details. Everything is nicely done. And of course, let's look at the back part of the figure. He does have the butt armor, as I call it, because it is protecting his butt. And there is the back side where you can see the difference in the colors of the joints. So yeah, that's pretty much the aesthetics for Reedemer. So that's all I can really point out, but let's take a look at the Dark Reedemer now. Even though most of the details on the Dark Reedemer figure are exactly identical in terms of sculpt, I like the way that they painted some of these areas, because they do stand out even in this repaint. So let's take a look at his torso with the flowery pattern, as you can see right here. There seems to be a wash that they applied to it, so it stands out even more. It looks like black outlines were painted on these areas compared to the original where it just blended in with the armor. This stands out a lot more. So if you look closely at it, it looks like there is a wash over this design compared to the original one right here, where from a distance, it's literally just blended in with the rest of the armor design. So I like the fact that there is a wash that they applied to this top part of the torso area where these details are standing out, as well as the side parts of the shoulder armor. Yeah, they did like panel line it in some ways. I like to use the word panel line, but it looks like they did trace it over with like a black ink to make these like flowery patterns just stand out more on this version of the figure. Now for his leg part right here, whatever this is supposed to be, you can see that the black painted colors are also slightly different. This is much of a matte finish black compared to the upper parts right here. So even on this version, this area of the leg still stands out, and it didn't have to stay in the brown color. So that's pretty neat. And for the textured areas of the black parts of his suit, they also done that really nicely because more of it is just uniform compared to the uh, regular version where you can see how it's like a contrast of like lighter blues and darker blues. But that's also because when you use brighter colors, when certain areas are painted with the brighter colors, that whatever they painted it over with, it's going to be noticeable compared to black paint where it will just look the same no matter where you paint it on, especially if you're using a thicker coat of black paint. And for the details right here with the cross, it's in the red color instead of the green. And for his head sculpt, he does have the silver design with the black. And I like the fact that it looks this way. It looks way better than the original one. I have a bias for this dark version. I actually just like the colors overall. So that's why this one is like my favorite one between the two. And for the leg design, even though most of it is identical, the silvers are done nicely. There is no wash down here from what I can tell. Yeah, they did not apply a wash to the silver areas down here, but nevertheless, it still looks good. And even the arms look okay with the way that the silver paint is painted. And for the wings, let's take a look at the wings. It is, of course, a darker color compared to the lighter gray that we saw on that original copy of the figure. But even then, they still applied a sort of wash that makes it stand out. So, yeah, everything to the dark version, even though it's more simplified in terms of the colors, it does have a shelf presence to it that works, right? Like, I just love the fact that a simple repaint like this is actually effective. Because sometimes some of these simple repaints are not as effective. But in this case, with this one, it actually is. So on the backside, you can see more of the painted details with the wings in this darker color. And of course, the butt armor right there, we have a silver part of it. And let's zoom in on the legs so you can see the different jointed colors. So yeah, most of the details are identical, as I said, but the execution here with the paint colors, I think they did a pretty good job between these two figures. And just having both of them, I can tell that this Dark Redeemer just has a stronger shelf presence if you have him by himself. Now, I'm not saying that this original one doesn't have a stronger shelf presence on the shelf with your Spawn figures, but what I'm saying is that I think they did a actual good job with the repaint here. You can have this character in your other like medieval knights or whatever you're building, and it would still actually work. So, yeah. And that is pretty much the aesthetics for both of these figures. I hope I did a good job here. I feel like I botched it, but let's move on to the articulation. And for the articulation, we're just going to use one of these figures for that example. So let's start with his head sculpt. He can look up. He can look down. He can turn his head left and right. He can tilt his head side to side. For his arms, he can move them all the way. But the shoulder part here will hinder the articulation. And if you want to get his arms to rotate 360, just by moving his wings, his arms will be able to do a 360 no problem. And for the upper torso area of the figure, I think on my copy, it is kind of tight. It does rotate, as you can see right there. And for leaning forward, you're not going to get much of that kind of movement at all. For the waist area, it is really tight on this copy, but it should move if you heat it up. And for his legs, he can do the splits in some regard. Yeah, he can spread his legs out that much. He can kick his legs out only this high up. He has double jointed in the legs. They do work, as you can see. He also has articulation down here by the feet. Toe articulation. And is there any swivel? There is a little bit of a swivel. For his arms, he does have double jointed, but my copy of the figure has a very stiff upper joint here, so it's not really working. And for this side of the hands, there is swivel and wrist articulation, And there's also a bicep cut up here for the rotation of the shoulder part of his arm. As for his wings, he does have articulation with them. As you can see, they are pegged onto the back part of the figure, which has me concerned when it comes to the longevity of these wings. Not only do they have a bit of weight to them, I have a feeling that over time they will loosen and they will slant downward, but I found a fix to this. So if you use super glue, not to glue them in, but if you ever pop them off, they feel loose, what you want to do is just use a little bit of super glue, just use it on the peg area, let it dry. After it's dry, put it back in and it'll be much tighter again. That's the solution I found. Now, I'm pretty sure there's other solutions as well, but that's the one that I've used on one of my figures in the past when it came to this sort of issue. Now, the articulation is pretty simple. All you can really do is just move them like this. It technically should be able to rotate upward and downward, but because of how tight they're like in there, I'm not going to force it. So that's pretty much all the articulation for Reedemer, and it's going to be the same for Dark Reedemer as well. So, yeah. And let's do some comparisons after I put these swords onto their hands. So let me just get this sword onto the Reedemer here, which is really simplistic. You just do this. There you go. There he is with his sword. It does not want to stay in his hand tightly, which is quite unfortunate. And I'm going to put him to the side over here. Let's start with the first figure that we'll have him next to. It is Mcfarlane. Actually, let's move him like that. There we go. As you can see, he is taller than Mcfarlane, which I don't think is accurate. I have a feeling this guy's supposed to be bigger than even the Reedemer. So there's the first comparison. Here he is next to the Deviant, which I think they work together on the shelf pretty well. And for the last figure, here he is next to the Devastator. All right, that is the comparison with the Reedemer. Let me grab the Dark Reedemer and get him on the table because this is a hassle having these figures with giant wings. They take up so much room on this table. Okay, just get him right here. He actually holds the sword tightly for some reason. I don't know why the other one doesn't. Okay, don't fall over. Stay right there. Let's have him next to Mcfarlane again, just to show the differences. There you go. Here he is with the Deviant. Also not a bad pairing right here. And last but not least, here he is with Devastator. Okay. And that is it for the comparisons. Well, that was kind of a struggle getting them to stand on the table again. But if you did enjoy today's review on the Reedemer and Dark Reedemer, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.